Mario Kart Wii is the undisputed best game in the franchise, and if you don't think so, then you're wrong, and I sentence you to 50 years to racing on transition tracks. I thought since I don't feel like doing a Mario Kart World Track ranking because I'm a bit burnt out on the game, I could take a look at all the tracks in my favorite Mario Kart game and rank them. I'll be judging the tracks like usual, with the defining qualities being how fun the track is to race on, how creative the track is, and of course, the music. We got 32 tracks to rank, so let's get right into every Mario Kart Wii track ranked. Number 32, DS Yoshi Falls. Most of the tracks on the bottom half of the ranking are retro tracks, and that's mainly because at the time of Mario Kart Wii's release, they didn't have too many amazing retro tracks to choose from. All Yoshi Falls ends up being is a couple of turns and boost panels with some waterfalls sprinkled in between. At least this track isn't too long, and the track is pretty aesthetically pleasing. I just wish there was more to this track, and it's honestly not the worst thing ever, just a bit boring. Mario Kart Wii is the most consistent Mario Kart game, and even tracks like Yoshi's Falls that play slow aren't even as bad as they look. Number 31, DS Desert Hills. If you remember this from the Mario Kart World Grand Prix Cup ranking, then you'll know I'm not too big of a fan of this track. It's much better in the Wii remake rather than the Mario Kart World one though. While the layout is still pretty boring, there's a couple things here that make the track more interesting than the Mario Kart World one, and that's the abundance of pokies along with fire snakes. All Desert Hills ends up boiling down to is a bunch of curves and some of that stupid yellow material on the ground. Number 30, N64 Sherbert Land. The only reason this track sucks so bad is simply due to the ice physics that aren't fun to race on. The track consists on driving on a bunch of ice and dodging a lot of penguins. The layout of this track I find honestly pretty weird, as you drive around the edge and have to make sharp turns so that you don't hit walls, but not too sharp or else you'll fall into the water. In the middle of the track there's an icy cave with a bunch of penguins in it, along with some boost panels to make things go by faster. While the track is pretty visually appealing to look at, the layout isn't all too fun to play on, and the ice physics on this one make it pretty hard to race on as well. Number 29, SNES Ghost Valley 2. Another track that just boils down to one big circle with a couple of turns in between, but the aesthetic on this one is pretty cool looking. There's a bunch of boos on the dark background, and the music here is pretty haunting for Mario standards. There's not too many obstacles to avoid besides the walls, which if you hit fall down, and a bunch of holes in the ground on the track. There's a really weirdly placed boost panel and a little bump that launches you high in the air on the end of the track. I don't know why these two things are right at the end of the track, but I guess they don't hurt it anyway, so I'll let it slide. Number 28, Luigi Circuit. The very first track in the very first cup, and it's just pretty basic. The only thing I note is towards the end of the track there's a bunch of boost panels that lead to the finish line. Most of the track boils down to a bunch of turns on a basic track. I mean, there's a ramp over in the off-road area that can be tricked off of with a mushroom, but that's about it. Not an inherently bad track, just a bit boring in the layout of the track. Number 27, SNES Mario Circuit 3. Another pretty basic track here, and some people may be surprised to see it higher than others, but I find this one pretty fun to race on. I like the old feel it gives, which I mean it should do that because the track is as old as Gandhi. Yeah, once again this track is just a bunch of turns, but hey, there's a pretty fun and simple shortcut to do at the end. There's also another random ramp at the end of the track like Ghost Valley, which once again feels pretty out of place. A decent track to race on a couple times, but can get pretty boring after a while. Number 26, Daisy Circuit. Another basic circuit track, but this time it's themed around Daisy, so it's at least a bit more unique. The track here has a pretty laid-back and chill evening feel to it, and the sunset in the background is beautiful. About midway through the track, there's a little sidewalk that you can drive up on, which is pretty cool, I guess. There's some statues of Luigi and Daisy to look at in the center, which is cute and all, but why do they have statues of them as babies too? There's also a cool shortcut through some stairs, but I didn't get that footage, so my bad. Number 25, GBA Shy Guy Beach. One of the higher placing old retro tracks, and while that might be because I love pirates, this track is still fun to race on. I know, I kinda don't have a good relationship with sand, but for this track I'm willing to make an exception. There are a bunch of portions where some water is dividing the next sand pathway, and while the water slows you down, you can do a little hop over the water to not slow down. There's also a bunch of crabs on the track to dodge, along with a pirate ship in the background that launches freaking cannonballs at you that explode. They can be pretty annoying to dodge at times, but for the most part I think they're a fun inclusion that give this simple track quite a bit of personality. Number 24, N64 Mario Raceway. Another circuit-like track, but this one is actually pretty cool. While it looks pretty basic in comparison to a bunch of other tracks like it, this one's just visually appealing to me for some reason. Around the track, there's a bunch of inconsequential piranha plants scattered about, along with some mushroom trees to give the track life. Towards the end of the track, there's a pipe you can drive through and trick off of the sides of the pipe when you get to the end. While Mario Raceway ends up not having the most unique track design, it still has some things that make it stand out from other more basic tracks. Number 23, Mario Circuit. Back at it again with more basic circuit tracks, but this time it's cool because there's a chain chomp in the middle of it. Basic turns and curves for the first little bit of the track all lead to a section where there's a chain chomp to avoid and a shortcut with a ramp to take, but only if you have a mushroom. I also like the end bit with a bunch of item boxes to collect and Goombas to dodge. Mario Circuit isn't too long and actually ends up being pretty fun to race on, however visually the track can be pretty bland looking. Number 22, Dry Ruins. Now I know my hatred for desert tracks is pretty well known at this point, but Dry Ruins does the unthinkable and makes me actually like a desert track. At the start of the track there's a bunch of pokies to dodge and turns to take with a bunch of ruins being seen in the background. Eventually we get to some actual ruins that progressively fill up with more and more sand as the track goes on. This track is pretty creative compared to most other desert tracks, and I actually find myself pretty excited to race on this track most of the time. Number 21, N64 DK Jungle Parkway. Besides the very iconic big ramp, I honestly think this track is a bit overrated. It's still pretty fun to race on, and I really like the music as it makes me feel like I'm playing through a DK game. Towards the end of the track there's a bridge that leads into a little cave area that can be almost completely skipped with a mushroom. The worst part about this track does have to do with the big ramp that was mentioned earlier. Mario Kart Wii introduced the tricking system into Mario Kart, and for some stupid reason you can't trick off the biggest ramp in the game. I guarantee you if that was possible, DK Jungle Parkway would be at least 10 spots higher, but alas, woe is Jickbean, and I can't have everything I want. Number 20, Moo Moo Meadows. One of the most famous tracks in Mario Kart history, and for good reason. In the beginning of the track there's a field where a bunch of cows roam around, with more usually appearing after each lap. Later down there's a ramp, and at the end there's a bunch of patches of grass to drive around. This is a very solid track, but as the years have gone on it's been remade so much that it gets really old, and hopefully in the next game there's a different farm track to race on. Number 19, DS Delfino Square. I absolutely love the town setting in this one and all of the tight pathways that could be taken, along with seeing one of my favorite gaming races, Piantas, roam about. The rising bridge filled with boost panels towards the end of the track is also a pretty fun section, but my biggest problem with the track has to do with the fact that this doesn't feel like it comes from Mario Sunshine. I know it's not necessarily supposed to, but with a name like Delfino Square, I'd expect a little more Sunshine feel to it. Not a bad track, but one I wish was themed a bit better. Number 18, Moonview Highway. This is probably the single hardest track in the game simply because of all the cars moving around the hectic highway. Around halfway through the track we cross a bridge and enter a more city-like area filled with a bunch of boost panels. Moonview Highway is so stress-inducing, and included with all the cars is a bomb car that blows up if you touch it. There's a reason this track is in the later cups in the game because man is it hard, but it's also so rewarding to finish high in. Number 17, GCN Mario Circuit. This is by far the best looking basic track in the game. The best part about it has got to be the absolute abundance of enemies such as chain shops and piranha plants to avoid. There's even some little humps to trick off of, along with a short little bridge right before the end of the track. Unlike a lot of other circuit tracks, this one actually has a lot more going for it and keeps being entertaining throughout the entire track. Number 16, GCN Peach Beach. We're at the middle of the ranking, and what a fun track to have here. I love the theme here so much, and the multiple different pathways that can be taken are pretty cool. One side has some ramps to trick off of, while the other is a normal path with cataquacks to dodge. I love the inclusion of cataquacks so much, and all they do is launch you up high into the air like in Mario Sunshine. If you can't tell, I love all the Sunshine references because I'm one of the 3 Sunshine defenders in the world. Overall, this track is pretty great to race on, and I think it's pretty balanced in terms of difficulty. Number 15, GBA Bowser's Castle 3. Okay, this one really has no right to be up this far, but for some reason, all the older Bowser Castle tracks are so much fun to me. Obviously, the track still has the Super Circuit look, and a lot of enemies in this track are thwomps. There's also a bunch of ramps that take you over lava, and be careful for some lava bubbles that jump out at you when you're doing so. Also, the theme here is phenomenal and feels really classic and really brings together a great classic track. Number 14, Bowser's Castle. Compared to a bunch of other Bowser Castles in the series, I think the Wii one is a bit weaker than some of the others, but is still an amazing track. There's so many cool things here like a twisting room, some fire bars to dodge, and of course, the giant fire Bowser in the middle of the entire castle. I even like the ending bit with a bunch of fire geysers to trick off of. The music here once again is great and fits the Bowser Castle vibe so well. I like this track a lot, so that should show you just how high quality almost every track in the game is if the great track here is only at number 14. Number 13, GCN Waluigi Stadium. The best of the stadium/circuit tracks, and no surprise, it's a GameCube remake track. This track is pretty monster truck themed with a bunch of ramps and little bumps to trick off of. Eventually you can drive over to some pipes that have fake piranha plants come out of them, and that's just such a Waluigi thing to do. Even these signs telling you which way to go look Waluigi-like. This track feels so good to race on, and the music gets me hyped up to play on it every time. Number 12, GCN DK Mountain. The last GameCube retro track in the game, and what a fun one to end out on. You get to get shot up to the top of a mountain and then descend it all while tricking off of a bunch of ramps and dodging boulders. The trek down the mountain is so fun, and the turns that you do while going down are so weird feeling from a bunch of other turns, and I love it. I also absolutely love the face that the mountain has when you take the cannon up to it, as it really adds so much personality to this already charming course. Number 11, Maple Treeway. Who doesn't love driving on a maple tree and dodging a bunch of wigglers? On the track there's a bunch of leaf piles that you can drive through to get various items and even get OP items like stars. There's some fun intended shortcuts here too, and you can't forget the classic Jack-Off Bridge, Nathaniel Bandy. This track might have some of the best atmosphere out of all the original tracks in the game, and the music is such a sweet tune. Maple Treeway is pretty solid and just has so many unique things that make it so fun to race on. Number 10, DS Peach Gardens. If we want to talk about aesthetically pleasing tracks, then look no further than Peach Gardens. The best part about this track hands down is the hedge maze in the middle of the track with a bunch of chain chomps roaming about. There's a bit with some Monty moles popping out of the ground as well, and even a ramp cut to take around here. In later laps of the track, chain chomps roam around in other areas of the map too. I love the little mazes to traverse around here, and the idea of racing through a garden is very intriguing and fun. Number 9, Toad Factory. This might be my guilty pleasure track, but I don't care. The concept of Toad Factory is so amazing, seeing how item boxes are made. The machinery in the opening is pretty fun to dodge, and the panels that speed you up and slow you down are fun additions too. This music here is a classic and makes me feel like I'm child laboring around in a factory. I even love the ending bit with boost panels through the mud and a ramp at the end of it. Toad's Factory is such a fun track, and the Mario Kart World remake was even better. Number 8, Coconut Mall. I know, this should be number 1, but hear me out, and I know it's blasphemy, but Coconut Mall is not the best track in Mario Kart Wii. It's still a great track with an iconic theme and a great location, but I kinda wish it went on a little bit longer. Malls are one of my favorite settings in fiction, and Coconut Mall is by far one of the best mall locations in gaming. All the tracks from here on out are near perfect Mario Kart tracks, and it was so hard to rank them all, but unfortunately, it had to be done. Number 7, Grumble Volcano. Instantly off the bat, the setting is amazing. An active volcano that has a lot of the tracks slowly start to disappear as the track goes on is such a great concept. Obviously that's going to make the track super hard too, and yeah, Grumble Volcano is pretty challenging. There's even some fire snakes to dodge towards the end of the course and a lot of ramps to trick off of spread across the track. This track is so intense and is everything I want out of a stress-inducing track. Number 6, N64 Bowser Castle. The highest placing retro track by a long shot, and I don't know how everyone's going to feel about this one, but me personally, I think this is one of the best Bowser castles in Mario Kart. Since it's from Mario Kart 64, the castle has that Nintendo 64 aesthetic down, and I got a soft spot for that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of times where there's thwomps in your way, and I always find them pretty fun to avoid. Most of the reason this track is up so high is simply because of how it makes me feel while racing on it, and man does it make me feel good. Number 5, Koopa Cape. The theme is upbeat, the water is fun to drive on, and the underwater section is electric. I love everything about Koopa Cape, and it might be one of the most fun tracks in all of Mario Kart to race on. I don't know what more to say, it's themed well, and it's amazing to drive on. Truly, just peak track design. Number 4, Wario's Gold Mine. If we're going to talk about peak track design, then look no further than Wario's Gold Mine. There's so many twists and turns and ups and downs all throughout this track. The middle of the track has you drive through a mine with a bunch of mine carts around, and if you hit them you get stunned. There's also a secret way to get out of the mine if you follow the mine carts. You get to take a different, much cooler path than the normal one. The music here is great and makes me feel like I'm in some sort of western. Wario's Gold Mine is amazing and really fits the entire persona that is that sexy beast Wario. Number 3, Rainbow Road. In my opinion, the single best Rainbow Road across the entire franchise, and not only is it well designed, it's so hard too. There's stuff happening around every turn you take with so many ramps to trick off of as well. I also love when you fall off the track, you just turn into a meteor storming down to earth. As Rainbow Road tends to be, it's so fast paced and hectic that of course it's going to end up being not only one of the best Mario Kart Wii tracks, but one of the best Mario Kart tracks ever. Number 2, DK Summit. DK Summit is the best introduction to the trick system that could have possibly been made. There's so many ramps, half pipes, and even little humps to trick off of. Not to mention the fact that this is set in a snowy ski slope type area and you have one of my favorite tracks in the game. Number 1, Mushroom Gorge. This track is simply the greatest trick spam fest ever. The track consists of so many different mushrooms to trick off of. This is my favorite track simply just because of how fun it is with all the bouncy mushrooms to trick on. I love the setting and the buoyant music that Mushroom Gorge offers. Towards the end of the track there's a mushroom cave which looks so cool, and of course a bunch more shrooms to trick off of. Combining every single factor that Mushroom Gorge has makes it my undisputed best track in Mario Kart Wii. Well, there you have it, there's every Mario Kart Wii track ranked. I know this is kind of a weird video to do right now, and I know it was also a little more fast paced than normal, but I don't know, I just felt like putting this one out. Once again, I want to thank you guys for the continued support. It means the absolute world to me, and I hope to continue entertaining every single one of you in the future. And hey, you know, if you enjoyed this one, maybe give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. It would help me out a lot, and I'd greatly appreciate it. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, be good people, and I'll see you in the next one.